Alright, someone in one of my last videos pointed out the fact that Mario 3, Super Mario Bros. 3, the classic raccoon-tailed, amazing game level-based system, didn't have saves. In that video I pointed that out, and they said, well, Zelda, The Legend of Zelda had saving ability, so why doesn't Mario 3? Well, that's a good question, because the truth of the matter is, Zelda does in fact have the ability to save games on the NES, and it was unique at the time because it actually had a battery backup, whereas Mario 3 didn't. And then you go, well, wait a second, Zelda came out in 86, Mario Bros. 3 came out in 88. Why didn't they just include that same technology in there? And the answer isn't great. The answer is kind of like, there's a slightly artistic kind of answer, but there's also a whole lot of, well, it's just, that's kind of how it was, kind of reality answers. And not shockingly, as we are dealing with in 2026, ridiculous prices for things like RAM due to AI. Back then, they had issues with RAM as well. Remember, the battery backup system that Zelda used basically let the RAM stay active so you could save the game. It would use a little trickle of power just to keep the files and the condition like frozen inside the game system. That was essentially the save file. Mario Brothers and Mario Brothers 3 did not have that, and the reason why was because it was expensive. That kind of RAM technology, even in the 80s, was very expensive, and now we're dealing with our own 2026 version of the RAM crisis. But that random access memory was just too expensive, and the way you got around this was through either through level design. Mario 3 was designed to be kind of a single playthrough. You could get it done in an afternoon if you really played. Although most of us who grew up in that time period understand the reality was you would basically beg your parents to let you leave it on all night long so you can come back from school and finish the game with your friends. Otherwise, you lose all your progress, and inevitably, mom would like unplug it to basically, I don't know, run a vacuum cleaner or something, or the power might blip, or any number of other things would happen. Well, the way that the folks at Nintendo and the game designers of Mario 3 got around this was they started using things like the warp tunnels in Mario Brothers Original, as well as the warp whistles that you see being used in Mario 3. And that's kind of how they got through it. They basically gave little workarounds. They typically would design the levels to be challenging enough to last a while, but not so challenging that you can only get like one level done in an afternoon and you might lose all the progress. They gave you ways to bypass the system. And what you see here is the first warp whistle system, me losing my raccoon tail there, and then from here you were able to actually warp your way to a further level, just thus bypassing in some cases several hours of gameplay, and actually taking the place of a save was the warp whistle. You didn't start seeing saves being implemented at scale until the Famicom or the Super Nintendo came out years later, where it was always just integrated. There'd be a battery backup. Ironically, because it was a battery-based backup system, many of these games no longer have the save function optimized because the batteries are now dead, but that's just how it goes, and this is the warp system, and this is how Mario 3, the Nintendo got around the save system, but they did not implement the same system that they had in place for Legend of Zelda.